I wasn't going to do this originally, but I kind of feel it's necessary if you're going to see an example of how PHP will run in a web server but not in a web browser alone. Actually, it's partly non-functional. It's not completely non-functional, as you'll see. Basically, it doesn't run correctly. Now, so here's how you write a PHP file, like really, really basic description. You actually start it out as an HTML file. Usually. I'll get to the specifics and the exceptions later. Now, the suffix for the file is actually PHP, which makes this a little bit confusing. But really, you could argue that PHP is a server-side variant of HTML that's optimized for uploading to databases, as I said previously. Oops. So anyway, I have to open with an HTML tag. I'm just going to do a hello world here, but I'm going to do it properly. I'm going to put in a head. So and then you have the body tag. And only then do you go into PHP, like this. Echo is the equivalent of print in a lot of languages. It just puts text on the screen. You can also put print. It also supports that. I guess you could call it a legacy feature. But echo is the basic one. It can be capitalized or not. You might notice that I'm a little bit inconsistent about that, even though I really shouldn't be. I tend to do breaks, caps, for no particular reason. We're not going to do any breaks here, though, because it's not necessary. Oof. So I have this as a heading in a paragraph. I close the PHP tag, that's because that's how you do it. Then I close the body. And then I close the HTML. Now this, I know for a fact, will run on a web server because I have already tested it. But it won't run correctly on a web browser solely as a file. This formatting is only for readability, actually. You don't actually have to indent like this in HTML and PHP the way you have to in Python, for example. Okay, so hello world text. Notice I've already written it there. That was my test run. But actually, this is not going to be hello world text. This is going to be hello world PHP, because otherwise there's no point in doing this. So hello world PHP. And now, I'll switch over to the web browser. Good. And we will load it as a file. And you can see the formatting is correct, but you have this little bit of junk down here. And if I had written anything more sophisticated, it would have simply given us the code instead of the function that I wanted to run. That's basically the issue, because PHP does a lot more than simply put text on the screen. It's obviously meant for moving data around. So how would I get this to work correctly? Well, we will look at the copy that I have on the web server, or on MAMP. A black screen there. Give me a second. So if we load it as a web page on localhost, well, is MAMP running? Yeah, MAMP's running. I had to double check that. So localhost, hello world, and the index file will go. Yeah, the index file is index.php by default. And there it is. So it's still only hello world, but it's formatted correct and there's no extra code there. But now I'm going to code something proper, involving actual uploads to a database. So I'm going to code a web page here that in theory will upload data to an SQL database, which is basically MAMP's focus on how to. Well, MAMP's focus is to test web pages like this, essentially. So first we'll code the web page here. But I'm not going to use Notepad necessarily. Because I'm going to have to code something a little bit longer, I'm actually going to use a program called Atom. Atom was actually developed by Github. It wasn't just developed on GitHub, but actually by GitHub. So it's actually one of GitHub's few branded products, other than obviously the GitHub software, which supports the website. And it's a very handy substitute for, say, brackets or Sublime Text. But unlike Sublime Text, it is completely freeware. And it works in a very similar way to these other text editors that are marketed towards software developers, because it'll give you the number of the line, see? And it's based very much on folders of projects, which again suits it very well to web development. It's also something that it has in common with brackets and Sublime Text. Here I just have the support files of this project. So Ajaxify adds Ajax capability so that when something is input into this little experimental website I'm building or web application, it's not necessary to, for example, delete entries in the form that you've already submitted. You could also prevent redirection to another page, although I opted not to use that feature. And this is all prepared in advance here. jQuery's, of course, plugin, or there are several other terms for it, but basically it's a JavaScript file like Ajaxify that adds a lot of capabilities that you can call up. I'm hesitant to call it a library because it's really more of a plugin, and it's a JavaScript file, JS. Not to get diverted down a rabbit hole, but this is the actual jQuery website, and they call it a library even though it's a JavaScript file. It's not a lib file or anything like that, or a DLL. And they're showing you here how it's often used with Ajax, but this is all a bit of a distraction because all I was really using it for when I developed my uploader was for success and failure messages and for the upload button, submit button, basically. So anyway, back to the project. I have a style sheet. This is also prepared in advance, actually for another project. And I've modified it a little bit for this one. That could be a whole tutorial in and of itself. A very complex one, actually, about how to write cascading style sheets. I'll have to continue all this in the next video, though.